For nearly 15 years, Gabby Giffords has been in public service. She was the youngest woman ever elected to the Arizona State Senate. She represented her community in the Arizona legislature from 2000 to 2005, and then in the United States Congress from 2006 to 2012. And she was consistently ranked as one of the nation's most centrist members of Congress. In 2007, Gabby married Mark Kelly, a naval aviator who flew 39 combat missions in Operation Desert Storm, and was a NASA astronaut. Mark flew his first of 4 missions in 2001 aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour, the same space shuttle that he commanded on his final flight in May 2011. He's also commanded the Space Shuttle Discovery and is only one of 2 individuals who visited the International Space Station on 4 different occasions. After Congressman Giffords was wounded by a would-be assassin's bullet in January of 2011, she and Mark have become known around the world for their story of hope and resilience. We're grateful to Congressman Giffords and Mark Kelly for joining us today for a conversation with Hanna Rosin about their lives before and after their shooting, and hear views on responsible gun ownership in the 21st century. I have one other thing to add, and I just want to say that this is the bit of the fun element to it. I'm a fan of Bono. I've happened to interview Bono a few times. I went to Bono's concerts, and the thing that both enlightened and yet now, Mark has just deflated me. Bono would, from his concerts. How many of you went to a Bono concerts when he was around last time? Remember when he was speaking to Gabby from up in space, and we all thought that was live? Nonetheless, it was taped, but it was a magical moment between Mark and Gabby Giffords. So, taped or not taped, it was astounding. So, Hanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's before we started. So I'm going to start out with a few simple questions to get us going, get to know Gabby a little bit better. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
A night owl.
Cat person or a dog person?
A dog person.
Houston or Tucson?
Tucson is my home.
Uh-huh.
So Houston's okay, too.
Oh, pretty good.
You don't want to put down anybody?
No.
No, okay.
Especially Texas.
Especially Texas, exactly. Although you seem tough. Coffee or tea?
Sugars.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
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 Okay.
Tea with what?
Sugars. 2 sugars.
2 sugars. That's a lot of sugar. So from the very beginning, you and Gabby have made the stages of her recovery public. Videos in the hospital, speaking like this. Why did you do it that way?
You know, it's interesting, when Gabby first got to the rehab hospital, which is in Houston, Texas, about 2 weeks after she was injured, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I want to help. I want to do something for you. What can I do?" And I didn't really have anything for him. And then he said, "So are you going to record any of this, all her therapy?" And I said, "Well, I never really thought about it. Why don't you just go grab a camera?" Mm-hmm. So it wasn't actually something that was really planned. It just happened. And then got her therapists, whenever Gabby was in a room doing therapy, they would set up the camera and turn it on. And it wasn't until later that when Gabby did her first interview with Diane Sawyer on ABC, did they ask, was there anything out there? And we actually wound up having a lot of stuff, but it was kind of by happenstance.
But a lot of people would have said no, I think.
I
don't want anyone to see me like this.
Yeah, well, Gabby had to give permission for anything that was put out there about her. And, as we travel around the country, and we still find this, that her recovery and what she went through has been very inspirational for a lot of other people that have had their own medical issues and injuries. And so it seemed like the right thing to do, that would motivate others in their own therapy.
Yeah, didn't you visit the Boston bomber people too,
Yes.
right? And then didn't you visit them in the hospital?
It's a hospital.
Yeah, at the rehab hospital, I think it's called Spalding, up there in Boston. We were actually in Boston a couple days ago, but this was just about a year ago, and we visited with a lot of these folks that are now, multiple amputees, and just saw what they were going through, and I think, you know, they draw a little strength from,
Yes.
Gabby, from her own recovery.
Yes.
And have you been involved in the therapy or the recovery at all?
Not really.
I did in the beginning. Actually, we, you know, now we're both really, really busy. And, you know, in the beginning, I used to be like a lot of involved in the physical and occupational and speech therapy. But, you know, Gabby's at the point now where it's just pretty much her and the therapist.
Thank you.
What are you doing then?
Well, all kinds of stuff. I've got a bunch of things I'm involved with. I think we'll get to some of that.
And Gabby, do you feel like you are going back to the old Gabby or creating a new Gabby in this process?
Better, stronger, tougher. Good stuff.
Yeah, so the new Gabby gets
New Gabby.
New Gabby Giffords.
New Gabby Giffords, okay. And how do you maintain a positive outlook? How do you do that?
I want to make the world a better place. Yes, yes, yes.
Because I always see you smiling when I see you. Mark, you once told a story about Gabbys Recovery that included a ring, that was a story about a ring. Can you tell us that story?
Well, yeah, it's actually this ring. When Gabby was in a coma in the hospital in Tucson, just days after she was injured, you know, you don't know and the doctors don't even know what amount of brain activity is going on when somebody's in a coma. And one of the first things we saw when we knew that Gabby Giffords was still in there somewhere was while she was unconscious, but you know, at some level she was still thinking and able to pay attention. She, with her eyes closed and still kind of out of it, pulled off my ring.
The
With
one
her
on your finger?
Yes, on my finger, pulled it off and started flipping it through the fingers of her left hand.
While in a coma?
Yes, yes. So she wasn't exactly fully in a coma, and that's when we figured out that Gabby is still in there.
And that's something she used to do?
She used to, yeah, usually like sitting at dinner at a restaurant or something, she'd often pull it off and do the same thing.
Uh-huh, that's amazing. And you don't remember? No.
Not really.
Right, you just saw it happen. Gabby, is it true that in the early phases of your recovery, you just said the word chicken?
Chicken, chicken, chicken. Chicken, chicken, chicken.
That was it,
Chicken, chicken, chicken. Chicken, chicken,
for a
chicken.
long period of
A
time.
long time, chicken, chicken,
Yeah.
chicken.
And it, you know, and it has,
Has anyone explained why?
yes,
Like, yes.
absolutely. Yeah, we knew that even before she started saying anything. Because that the speech therapist said with a left side traumatic brain injury that affects your speech centers, that people often do what's called perseverate on a single word. And she picked the word
Chicken.
chicken, which is
a good
much
word.
better than many other options. Could have been a lot worse.
You didn't feel she was talking about your bravery or anything like that?
I don't know.
Gabby, what can you do now that you could not do 2 years ago?
Drive a car.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing, I think. A few months ago, we were at the Formula One track in Austin, Texas. The new, the Circuits of the Americas. So this is a new F1 race here in the United States, and it wasn't during the race, but we were there on a separate day with a guy, a good friend of ours who built the track. And I said to Gabby after we drove around a couple times, I said, "So are you ready to drive?" Well, the last time she drove a car was to the Safeway where she was shot. And she said she wanted to give it a try, so she jumped in the passenger seat, and I said, "Okay, left foot," because her right one would not really work well on the gas or the brake, and left hand. And the third time around the track, she was going 110. And you only went off the track once.
There are videos of these guys skydiving from after the accident, so you'd be amazed what Gabby can do. What's the toughest challenge now?
Aphasia. I don't like it at all.
And that's the aphasia is the speech issue that she has from her brain injury.
Yes.
But for Gabby, the more difficult part is the transmission part,
Yes.
not the understanding.
Meaning saying the word,
Saying the
finding the right words, right. But is it true you asked to relearn Spanish then?
Sí, por favor.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so once a week, right?
Once a week.
Yeah, so once a week, Gabby has a Spanish instructor that comes over. I try to not be there then because she knows I took 5 years of Spanish in high school. And this woman completely abuses me at the kitchen table. But it's great for Gabby because she used to give speeches in Spanish and do interviews in Spanish and do radio ads for her campaigns in Spanish.
Okay, so that's why Spanish.
Well, it was just such a big part of her life.
Yes.
Right. And I hear you now have a dog,
And Nelson the dog.
Nelson the dog. And where did you get Nelson
A
the dog?
prisoner, a murderer.
Prisoner.
Well, he was raised by a murderer in prison. So he's
Never a dull moment with you guys. Yes.
So Nelson the dog is a lab
Mixers.
golden retriever mix. And he was raised in a prison in Massachusetts, a women's prison. And we actually Skyped with the woman after we got the dog. And it was only later that we found out why she was in there, which was
Murderer.
murder. She was a murderer, but she raised a great dog.
Yeah, great dog.
Is he a good helper dog?
He helped a dog.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
He helps you.
Yeah, he does a lot of things.
Now, you two have gone from not living in the same city to being together a lot. What has that been like, that transition?
Snuggle.
No, it's been really great. You know when really bad things happen to people, sometimes it can be really hard to find the positive things that come out of it. In our case, in our personal relationship, that's one.
Closer.
Yeah, and we, before we had one of those commuter marriages, which included Tucson and Houston and Washington, D.C., and now we get to live in the same place. So that's a positive thing that came out of a really bad day.
And being closer, right?
Closer.
Being closer, yeah. Gabby, can you tell us what you're working on now?
Americans Responsible Solutions.
So that's our political action committee, which is a C4 and a super PAC trying to get our elected leaders to do something about these pretty horrific rates we have of gun violence in this country. I don't think people realize it, but we have 15 to 20 times the death rate from gun violence than any other industrialized nation. And we can do a lot better than that. I mean, we do not need to be there. So we've got to convince our elected officials to take this on as a serious issue and to pass reasonable gun laws that most Americans agree with.
Now, I've also seen videos of you shooting guns, including the same gun that Gabby was shot with, or that she owns. Can you tell people what your relationship with guns was before the accident and how it's changed after the accident?
Not really.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it has changed much. I've always owned a gun as an adult. I got my first gun when I finished flight school. My dad bought me a gun, but both my parents were police officers. And Gabby's from Arizona and has lived in the West and is a gun owner. And it's not something we did, every weekend, but we would occasionally, shoot our guns at Gabby's parents' house, which they lived way out in the desert.
Before or
Before and after. So it hasn't really changed all that much.
But how was it to shoot a gun? I mean, now that guns have a different meaning for you,
Not really.
it wasn't so traumatic for you.
No, I don't think so. Well, one of the things.
That's unusual.
Well, also, one of the interesting things with Gabby's injury, though, and her neurosurgeon told me this very early on. He said, if there's any other positive thing about her injury is that she won't suffer from post-traumatic stress.
Because you don't remember.
Because she was shot first.
Right.
And shot first and shot in the head. So, the memory, I mean, what do you remember from that day?
Oh, Toyota mittens.
She remembers where she parked?
Your Toyota.
Yeah.
And
So,
what is
like, if I
mittens?
was to drive to Target right now and park my car and come out 30 minutes later, I might not remember where my car is. A year later, when we went to the Safeway, a year to the day, Gabby remembered where she parked. So I
Wow.
thought it was pretty remarkable after all that happened. And then she remembered one of her staff members brought her mittens because it was cold. But that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
No noise. Not the noise, nothing else. That's lucky, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're in a unique position. because there are two very polarized sides of this debate, what do you think is critical in bringing together those two sides of the gun debate?
Well, it's a complicated issue. You know, there's not one reason why we have the rates of gun violence that we do in this country. It's pretty complex. One of the things we need to do first is to balance out the politics on the issue. And the gun lobby has been doing a very effective job for about 30 years, building a lot of influence in Washington, D.C. So we've got to get that piece solved, and we're working on that. One of the other parts of this is to try to keep the dialogue going in all parts of the country, not just here in New York or, you know, in California, but around the entire country to build a community of people that want something done on this issue.
And what does reasonable gun policy look like? Because you guys have thought
Well,
about
for
this.
us, you know,
7 states is
well, yeah, so we've traveled around the country, and we've visited a lot of states. Gabby was just mentioning, last summer we went to 7 states in 7 days. And getting, ideas on what this looks like in places like Alaska or North Dakota. And after, traveling around and figuring this out and trying to develop what we think are some sensible policies, things rise to the top pretty quickly. Like background checks, which go a long way to keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and the dangerously mentally ill.
Like closing the loopholes.
Closing those loopholes at gun shows and over the internet, because that's where 40% of guns are purchased. So 40% are purchased without a background check. Why do we allow criminals this very easy way to get a gun? It's not really, it's illegal for them to do that, but where they can go through the process without a background check. So it's those things. Issues around domestic violence, which we've been having some success
Right,
with.
I know this is important to you.
Yes.
Gabby was in Washington last week with members of the U.S. Senate, and it looks like we're going to get our first hearing on the issue of domestic violence and guns in the Senate Judiciary Committee. So Gabby met with Senator Leahy about that. So that's a critical and important step forward. Magazine size. The day Gabby was injured, the shooter there brought 2 high-capacity magazines, 33 rounds in each magazine, first magazine was emptied in 15 seconds. Every bullet hit somebody. Does somebody really need a 33-round magazine
Not
to defend
really.
themselves? So, those things and others.
And do you have relationships with the NRA that you can bridge that a little bit?
We've tried. I've spoken with some of the leadership at the NRA. There are things that the NRA does that's very important, that they do a good job with regards to gun safety. But their organization, we feel, has changed over the last several years.
In which direction?
Well, into a direction that, I believe is to try to support the gun manufacturers as much as possible. And that doesn't make us safer. I don't believe it does.
And Gabby, are you hopeful about the future of common sense gun policy?
Gabby, you hopeful about it?
Yes, hopeful. It's been a long, hard
Well, how
haul.
about, I think what you're asking is, the future, are you?
Hopeful.
Yes.
Yes,
But are you
hopeful.
optimistic about it?
Optimistic. Yes, optimistic.
Yeah, it'll be a long road, I think.
Long, hard haul, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, it's been 30 years of, at least from folks that want common sense legislation passed, without a lot of what I feel a lot of hard work on the political end of this issue.
Now, I know you are both working on a book. What is the message you want to convey with your book?
Well, one
Enough is enough.
exactly.
Enough is enough.
Yeah, it's exactly what Gabby said after. Do we really want to live in a country where after the death of 20 kindergartners and first graders, the national response to something like that is
Nothing.
nothing?
Nothing.
We don't need to we can do a lot better than doing absolutely nothing.
Right.
You know, we can, I mean, we need to try to stop incidents of, you know, mass shootings that occur at a pretty regular rate. You know, we need to work on that aspect of this. At the same time, there's about 30 to 35 murders with a gun every single day in this country. That daily toll of gun violence, what that takes on this nation. Also, I mean, not only the deaths, but how about the cost?
Right.
You know, the cost to society is pretty great. So there's a lot to be done there.
So Gabby, how about we end this on enough is enough?
Enough is enough.
Good. And thank you all. And thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.